Hey everybody, this is photographer Scott Blind, and you're listening to the PetaPixel Photography Podcast with Sharky James. Enjoy.
This episode is brought to you by our friends at Fujifilm, Calibrite, Jupio, and Ceramonic. Further details and discount codes later in the show. Welcome to the PetaPixel Photography Podcast, episode 370. It sure sounds like Nikon wants out. In this episode, more indications Nikon's ready to move on, how not to dehumanize your subject, 2 new Canon RF lenses, Drobo files for bankruptcy protection, Cosina's 35 macro, Skylum brings HDR merge to Neo, TTArtisan's fast new 50, Meike goes wider, and Nikon is raising its prices. All that and more in episode 370 of the PetaPixel Photography Podcast. Thank you so much, Scott, for opening the show. I greatly appreciate it, brother. Visit the Instagram account of West Virginia-based photographer Scott Blind, and you will quickly see that toy photography is his thing. That's right. I said thing. That happened. Whether it's Spider-Man, Wonder Woman, The Punisher, or anything in between, Scott has probably shot it and shot it well. So head on over to his account, which is scott.blind on Instagram, and check that out. Blind is B-L-I-N-E, by the way, and check out all the sweet photos that he's created with his quite impressive action figure collection. He's got me beat by many. Let's just call it many. It's a lot. And I'd like to thank you all for joining us here in episode 370 of the PetaPixel Photography Podcast. We appreciate you all so much, and thank you all for subscribing, rating, and reviewing us in iTunes or wherever else you listen to us. And as always, we appreciate you hitting that subscribe button. Do it now, please, so you don't miss a single episode, as well as telling all your friends on social media and elsewhere, and helping to get the word out about this show. Okay, with that, I'm your host, Sharky James. Let's hit it. At the end of 2021, over at the PetaPixel Mothership, it was my prediction in the bold camera predictions for 2022 post that stated that Canon and Nikon are done making DSLRs. And it was just last episode that I cited Nikon's deprecating of the D3500 and D5600 as further evidence of this. To me, it seems obvious after years of declining DSLR sales and all the action happening on the mirrorless front that Nikon as well as Canon are done making DSLRs. They may not come out and say it, but Nikkei Asia has. According to the financial publication, Nikon will be dropping the DSLR sooner than the previously expected 2025 timeframe. They know that between the rise of mirrorless and smartphones getting more capable cameras in them, Nikon will focus its efforts more heavily not just on mirrorless, but offering more unique features in them. Something it simply has no choice but to do to stay competitive and relevant. And that's a good thing. Nikon's not going anywhere anytime soon, so no one needs to worry. I don't know how many years ago it was now, but I even went so far as to say that Nikon might have been better off just skipping mirrorless and just be the king of the hill when it comes to DSLRs. Something I could have seen them doing, and they'd have made a whole lot of people happy. Remember, at this point, all the companies are so well diversified that they could do these things with their camera businesses, and it really doesn't matter all that much. Nikon doesn't have to be tops in cameras. Heck, it's been a while since they were even number 2. They're solidly in 3rd place now because they snoozed while Sony ran the table with their mirrorless offerings and Canon just went all in eventually. So it makes me wonder what things would have looked like if Nikon had just stayed with the DSLR and ruled the roost there instead. Now it looks like Pentax will be the remaining DSLR maker of note. And if I had to buy a DSLR today and it wasn't the Nikon D850, which I used to have and completely loved, it would probably be a Pentax, that K3, whatever it is. It looks pretty sweet, has all the features you want, just looks like a fun camera. Now, when that Nikkei Asia report came out, an interesting thing happened. Nikon didn't deny that they were moving away from DSLRs. What they did say, though, is, quote, Nikon is continuing the production, sales, and service of digital SLRs. There was a media article regarding Nikon's withdrawal from SLR development. This media article is only speculation, and Nikon has made no announcement in this regard. End quote. Interesting. Also interesting is that it's now been nearly 2 years and 2 months since the company last released a DSLR. In that case, their crazy expensive D6 flagship. On the Canon side of things, they stated at the end of last year, 2021, that their EOS 1DX Mark III would be its last DSLR flagship, a body that was released in January of 2020. And the very last DSLR that they released was their EOS Rebel T8i, a body most people don't care about. That body came out a month after that flagship body. So if you're keeping score, it's been over 2 years since either company released a DSLR. Need I say more? The DSLR is dead. Long live the DSLR. Next. If you're in Canon's R mirrorless system, you might be happy to hear about 2 brand spanking new lenses, which the company has just announced. The RF 24mm f1.8 macro IS STM and the RF 15 to 30mm f4.5 to 6.3 IS STM. Both lenses, the company says, are, quote, ideal for entry-level and photography enthusiasts looking for the next lens after the standard zoom. End quote. The 24-18 has a built-in STM stepping motor like so many these days, making it not just useful for stills, but video as well. It has one ultra-low dispersion UD element, one aspheric element, and Canon's super spectra coating SSC to help minimize ghosting and flare to the extent that it can. The minimum focus distance of this macro lens is 0.14 meters, also known as 5.5 inches, and it has a close-up magnification of 0.5 times. It also features optical image stabilization with shake correction of up to 5.5 stops. So, along with one of Canon's RF mount mirrorless bodies and that fast f1.8 aperture, this should be a very useful lens for vlogging and shooting handheld in lower light situations. The new RF 24mm f1.8 macro IS STM will be available sometime in late August and sells for $599 US. Now, Canon's newest wide zoom, the RF 15 to 30mm f4.5 to 6.3 IS STM, has UD glass elements, one aspheric element, as well as the company's SSC coating, offers 5 stops of shake correction, and jumps to a full 7 stops when you attach it to an EOS R-based body that has in-body image stabilization. Something especially useful if you're shooting wide open at f6.3 on the 30mm end. This lens has a minimum focusing distance of 0.28 meters, that's 11 inches, but you can focus as closely as 0.13 meters or 5.12 inches when you manually focus while at the 15mm end of the pool. It also has an STM stepping motor, making it especially useful when shooting video as it's quieter, and it weighs in at 392 grams, also known as 0.86 pounds. It too will be available sometime in late August 2022 and is available for pre-order right now and comes in at $550. Neither of these lenses are terribly exciting, but as it's 2022, they're no doubt going to be solid performers, as you really can't go wrong these days. You truly have to look hard to find an awful lens. That, and there are so many lenses available now, so you've got your pick. Next. Back in the day, and we're talking about when I was still a photojournalist in Arizona, so let's say roughly a decade ago now, hard to believe, the only name in both direct and network attached storage for backing up your images and other data was Drobo. I think I first heard about them thanks to Frederick talking about them on TWIP, and as I was looking for an easy way to back my stuff up, I bought one, which wasn't cheap. And I still use it to this day because it wasn't cheap. I think it's the original Drobo, in fact, with 4 drive bays. They've got so many other models now. If you're not familiar with this device, it's basically a housing that you pop regular hard drives into, and via that hardware and the company's software and a bunch of magic, it makes sure that your data is all backed up. Locally, of course. And as we know, that's really not a true backup because a thief could just carry it off. It could be damaged, etc. And then you don't have a backup. They do. So you'd also want to have copies of your stuff up in the cloud and or offsite somewhere like a friend or family member's house in a safe deposit box, etc. Something. Anyhow, over time, competitors like Synology and OWC have come along and times have gotten tough for Drobo, apparently, as evidenced by its filing for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection in Northern California. Now, as you may know, filing for bankruptcy doesn't mean that the company's going under. What it indicates is that some tough decisions need to be made, and this is one of them. They'll get the chance to restructure their business, deal with any debt that they may have, etc. And it's a chance for them to get on better footing. Those who wish to make claims against Drobo's assets have until October 17th of 2022 to let California's Northern Bankruptcy Court know. In the meantime, consumers will need to decide whether or not buying a Drobo device is a good idea or not, especially since the device is virtually useless without its software. And as we know, all it takes is an update to your computer's operating system to break the software, and without a company around to update it, you essentially own the digital equivalent of a door stopper. Now, what's great about having a device like a Drobo or any of the others out there is that its software spreads your data across multiple drives within that unit. So if one drive fails, you're still good to go. You just pop in a new drive and you carry on. And if you want to add capacity, you take out the smallest drive or maybe the one that died on you, insert a new, bigger one, and you've got more space for your data. Along the way, over a decade ago now, back in December of 2011, photographer Trey Ratcliffe stated that he was no longer using Drobos, and 6 months later, Scott Kelby published a letter that probably everybody's seen by now called "I'm Done with Drobo." And it's been forever since I've heard anybody recommend Drobo first. Usually it's Synology or maybe OWC. Neither of those are inexpensive though, and the more capacity you need, the more you're going to be paying. But it sure beats having a bunch of separate drives and doing things the old way, because that's not very efficient, and who wants all of that in their closet or on their desk, etc. It's nice just having one device. And yes, that rhymed. It happens. Now, I'm going to continue to use my Drobo as a backup because, again, I spent a lot of money for it and it still works until it doesn't. If the company goes under and thus the software stops getting updated, I'm going to need to migrate that data over to a new system, which is not going to be fun and not going to be cheap. And I really don't want to do that. I mean, who wants to drop a good chunk of change if you don't need to, right? So personally, I'm pulling for Drobo for completely selfish reasons. Well, and they're also good people over there, and I wish them the best. Next. Just a quick reminder that just days are left in Calibride's birthday promotion, where you can save up to $40 on some of their most popular problem-solving products. I'm talking about $25 off their color checker display, $25 off their color checker display Pro, and $40 off their color checker Plus. For years now, when you knew them as X-Rite, you've heard me talk about how important it is to get accurate color at the time of capture and to edit while viewing accurate color on your monitor. The two examples I always use are bridesmaid dresses and sports uniforms. If you're charging for your work especially, you owe it to your clients and yourself as well, pride, right? To get it right. If the bridesmaid dresses are a certain shade of green, your images had better reflect that. Otherwise, you're going to hear about it. If little Johnny plays Pee-wee baseball for the Dodgers, it had better be Dodger blue that they see. Everyone knows what Dodger blue looks like. So you guys get the idea here. And getting great color is a cinch with Calibride's color checker products. So why not save and celebrate their birthday with them? So head on over to calibrite.com where you'll see this awesome promotion right there on the front page. That's CALIBRITE.com. Like Cali and Bright spelled the wrong way, or the right way in this case. And while you're there, pick up a color checker passport like I have. Have someone hold it in the scene, shoot a photo of it, and then your photo editing software will make sure that everything is all matchy-matchy. But hopefully your monitor is calibrated as well. It is calibrated, right? Rectify that now and save yourself some money. But hurry, because this sale ends July 31st, 2022. Next. Last time around, I told you about Fujifilm's new Create With Me monthly photo competition where you can win sweet Fuji gear. Round 3 was travel, and as it's now July of 2022, it's time for round 4, and that's nature. So all of you nature photographers out there, whether you shoot with a Fuji body or heck, your smartphone even, enter your images and maybe you'll land yourself some sweet new Fuji gear. Select Fujifilm creators are sharing their insight and secrets, so maybe you can pick up that missing piece to win this round, or show them that you've already got what it takes and take that prize. To check out the details, hit the link in the show notes or just head on over to bit.ly.com/createwithmenow. It's hard to believe, but this year marks 10 years of Fujifilm's X-mount. I've been a Fuji shooter for years now, leaving the heavier stuff in the dust, and I'm having more fun shooting with this system as well. Fuji heard about my switch, and it's now been over 3 years that they've been sponsoring the show, and we thank them for that. They rock! And don't forget their 52 weeks of free education over at bit.ly.com/52learn. Next. I don't know how they're able to do this, but third-party lens maker TTArtisan has just announced a new 50mm f2 lens for full frame, and somehow they're selling it for just $69. How? How is that even possible in 2022? I don't get it. Now, obviously, this lens is manual focus only, and dropping it is probably not going to be pretty, but worst case scenario, you're out $69. So not too bad. It's an ouch, but it's not a painful ouch. This somewhat nifty 50 is constructed of 6 elements in 5 groups with 2 high refractive index elements to control spherical aberrations. It has a minimum focusing distance of 19.69 inches, also known as 50 centimeters, and has a front filter thread size of 43 millimeters. 43. Almost no one has filters in 43. This is why you get your filters in 82 millimeters and a quality of step-up rings, which are like $20 or so. Otherwise, you're buying filters for all of your lenses when you just need one set and adapt them. Done. Thank you. I just saved you a bunch of money right there. This lens has a 10-bladed aperture diaphragm for smooth circular bokeh and a clicked aperture ring with marks from f2 through f16. Again, the sweetest fighter jet ever, the F-16. Fight me. The angle of view of this new 50 is 45 degrees on full frame cameras, 32 degrees on APS-C crop bodies. It's 60 millimeters wide by 35 millimeters deep. That's 2.36 inches by 1.38 inches. And it weighs in at just 7.05 ounces, also known as 200 grams. In other words, it's pretty small, it's pretty lightweight, and somehow, amazingly, they're just charging $69. That is, unless you want a lens hood along with it, and you're going to be paying $75. So another $6 right there. Not too bad. It doesn't break the bank. How are they making any money, though, at $69? I don't get it. Next. Ukraine-based Skylum has announced that they're bringing HDR Merge to its Luminar Neo product as Neo's first paid extension. Now, if you're not familiar with it, HDR Merge is able to take up to 10 exposure bracketed images and combine them into a single HDR image quite easily, all without the nasty halos and artifacts that you see with other solutions out there. And if that wasn't nifty enough, you can also create HDR images from just one image in case you didn't shoot a bracket. Although that's obviously not ideal, as you might imagine. The more data you collect, the better. Now, of this, Skylum says, quote, artificial intelligence allows for the highest quality of bracket merging and a spectacular level of color enhancement, end quote, and Neo's HDR merge can be combined with the program's other tools to create photographic art via a number of its AI-based tools. And of all this wizardry, the company goes on to say, quote, they can enhance with one slider, fix colors and toning, add glow, play with super contrast, add realistic sun rays or vivid foliage. There is a whole world to explore. Luminar Neo gives photo artists the power to achieve the best HDR photos and go beyond in their editing, all in one app, end quote. Now, their standalone HDR program, Aurora HDR, hasn't been updated in years, so it looks like HDR merge within Neo is the way to go now. In fact, if you already own Aurora HDR, Skylum lets you get Luminar Neo with what they're calling a loyalty discount. So you can buy Luminar Neo at a discount and you get the HDR merge extension for free. HDR merge officially launches on July 28th of 2022, but from now until then, Skylum is offering discounted pricing during this pre-order period. Personally, I'm not a massive fan of HDR, as many of you guys might know. Not the garish kind, at least, with the cartoony colors and associated craziness. Where I think HDR shines is in being able to pull out more dynamic range via bracketed images. I always recommend stepping away from your screen when you're doing HDR for a few minutes or what have you after you've processed an HDR image, coming back and then looking at it with new eyes, as they say. You'd be surprised how over the top it suddenly looks to you. Dial things down a notch or two, step away again, and when it looks right to you without making that scrunchy face, then and only then are you probably good. It depends on what look you're going for, of course, and art is in the eye of the beholder, yada, yada, yada. But I would point out that we're in 2022 right now, not 2012. And when you know better, you do better. Now, if you wouldn't mind, please throw some thoughts, prayers, good juju, and whatever else to our friends at Skylum and the people of Ukraine. You and I, hopefully, don't have missiles raining down on us, and I can only imagine what they're going through right now. Next. Some of my biggest pet peeves today are TikTokers, Reels, and all that nonsense. I know, it's a little bit, hey kids, get off my lawn, but geez Louise, it seems like what passes for content creation these days is a bunch of contrived scenarios, really bad acting that seems to fool 99% of people, amazingly, and it all seems to be just a massive waste of human energy. I get it though, eyeballs equals money, so more power to them, I guess. If you're able to build an audience on nonsense and get paid for it, then, well, it is what it is. Personally, I prefer actual good content. Now, the vast majority of the time, we don't hear about these goofy videos unless somebody gets injured or worse. That and when the subject decides to speak out about being used, and that's what it is after all, for entertainment and for the TikToker to make a buck. As is the case with an Australian woman named Marie who didn't at all appreciate being the subject of one of Harrison Pollock's TikTok videos. A video which has now been seen over 65 million times at the time of this recording. As content creators ourselves, we know that here in the US and in many countries, so long as your subject is in public, they don't have an expectation of privacy. As bad as that sounds. After all, you can see them, others can see them, and memorializing them in photos and video for others to see them later is perfectly legal. It's time shifting, essentially. And again, legal where it's actually legal. In some countries, that is completely against the law right there. So check your laws. Now, if it's a photo of somebody sitting on a bench or what have you, I say no harm, no foul. If they're doing something, though, that's embarrassing, well, you've turned a moment that perhaps a handful of people saw into one that millions will now see and laugh at. And I think that's not cool. You've essentially subjected an innocent person to ridicule or worse for who knows how long. The internet's, that's right, the internet's is darn near forever. But let's say that what you captured for all to see wasn't a moment of embarrassment, but something that seemed otherwise innocuous. Like walking up to an old lady, handing her a bouquet of flowers, then walking away. All the while recording her reaction. Because, of course, you're doing it for the gram, or TikTok in this case. Seems relatively harmless enough, but maybe your subject wishes not to be the subject of a viral video. They were in public, and in most countries, that means they're fair game, like I said, but you're making a good chunk of change off that moment that you captured. You, not them. That's just one of the rubs right there. But kids today, and they're mostly kids doing this, well, 20s on younger, let's say, they don't care. They have incentive to top each other, and it's all about the eyeballs, man. Get the views, and you get the cheese, or money. Everyone else be damned. When I was a photojournalist, I had great latitude, of course. I mean, that's part of living in a free society. I also had professional ethics to live by, though. The goal was to capture the news and other stuff that was going on in the community, make great images, and those would then end up in the newspaper or online, or both. And the vast majority of the time, that was completely fine. Sure, people getting arrested didn't appreciate seeing their photo in the paper and on the website, but them's the breaks, as Boris would say. Rarely did somebody call or email the paper to complain about having been photographed. You know, if they even saw it, it was no big deal to them. They figured, well, I'm in public, so that's just how it is. When people did complain, it was usually because they consider themselves to be private people and they wish to keep it that way, despite going in public, you know, as was their right to feel that way, I guess. But venturing out in public and becoming the subject of a contrived encounter for the sake of having a video to monetize, that's where we've gone off the deep end a bit as a society. People seemingly spend hours a day scrolling their feeds, watching these goofy videos, and thus creating more demand for it. I mean, I say read a book or something useful. Anyhow, this older woman in Australia named Marie wasn't having it, and I applaud her for speaking out. She was interviewed by ABC Radio there in Australia, where she says, quote, "He interrupted my quiet time, filmed and uploaded a video without my consent, turning it into something it wasn't, and I feel like he's making quite a lot of money through it." End quote. She's right, and he is. Maybe after shooting the video, he should have approached her, secured her permission, and offered to pay her a share of the money or, you know, a portion of it. I'm not saying half, maybe a set fee, a couple $100 or what have you. He's easily making thousands off of just that video. 65 million plus views after all. I mean, come on. Assuming he came up with this concept, which I don't think he did. I think a lot of people are doing this, but let's say he did. If she decided not to sign a release, he could just shoot this again and keep going until you find somebody that has the reaction that you're going for, and then have him sign a release, give him a little bit of money, and call it good. But he didn't do that. Like I said, I'm pretty sure he didn't come up with this concept. And like with photography, a lot of TikTokers copy each other when they see something that works, and they do the same thing. Millions of people watch them mindlessly, and I'm sorry, but not sorry. Now, for his part, Pollock's people, yes, he has people, that's how big he is, put out a statement saying, quote, "He offers flowers and pays for complete strangers' groceries, and while cynics may claim it's for views, Harrison simply has a personal commitment to helping people feel more connected and trusting. His videos are filmed in public places and so technically do not require consent. Having said that, while he has only so far encountered gratitude, if someone is upset, then they should feel free to personally email him." End quote. Film. Okay, one of his people is definitely not a 20-something. They revealed themselves right there. Tell me you're not a 20-something without telling me you're not a 20-something, right? For one, I just don't buy that he's doing this to make people feel good and all that kind of stuff. I mean, come on. You can just tell by his attitude. He's all about making the money. That's my personal opinion. Fight me. Besides, he is well aware now that Marie is not happy that her video is up there, and yet her video is still up there. If he cared, he could remove it, but he has not. So there's that. Now, here's the moral of this story as it relates to the rest of us. I think it's important that we're careful with what we make our subjects and what we share. Remember the old saying, just because you can doesn't mean you should. It's something to think about. Are you doing harm to somebody? Then, okay, don't use that photo or that video. Being a decent person is hopefully still a thing. Next. These days, everyone is trying to save where they can, right? And make those dollars stretch even further. So there's no better time than now to save on batteries for your camera. As we all know, the ones from your camera company, while great, come with a great price as well, as in a large price. For instance, the EN-EL18D battery for Nikon's excellent flagship Z9 is a whopping $221. That one is 3,300 milliamp hours, by the way, but the one from our sponsor, Jupio, is just $140. It has more capacity at 3,500 milliamp hours, and when you apply that PetaPixel 20 code for 20% off, it's now just $112. $110 off the OEM battery from Nikon. Heck, you might as well just get two. Now, if you have Canon's awesome R5, you can get the OEM LP E6NH battery for $90 or the one from Jupio for just $62 and change currently when you use that code. For my Fuji X-T4, I could get the OEM NPW235 for $65 or nearly half that at $34 and change by using that code. Again, I might as well get two. Then I don't have to worry about running out of juice while I'm out shooting. That's peace of mind right there. I could go on, but you guys get the idea here. Batteries are one area where you could save big money with your photography and your videography. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that Jupio also has power banks for your smartphone, beefier portable power stations for powering your studio lights, etc. on location, all kinds of chargers for your batteries, vertical grips for your cameras, and so much more. So head on over to JupioUS.com. That's JUPIOUS.com. Use that PetaPixel 20 offer code, and you're going to save yourself 20% all day, every day. Next. Every darn time I mention Saramonic wireless lavalier packs, they fly off the shelves or whatever heck they have over at Saramonic HQ, especially the company's excellent UW Meike 9S units, which come in two different kits. Saramonic has once again upped its game and reinvented their popular UHF wireless mics to be even more awesome, and they did so without raising the price, and we thank them for that. They feature dedicated line and mic inputs, lithium-ion power with up to 8 hours of runtime. They're 36% lighter than the previous units, and an impressive list of pro features, setting them far apart from any of their competitors in its class. If you're looking to add to your list of services by shooting video, which generally pays more than photography, as we know, then getting great audio for interviews is key. The new UW Meike 9S system is what you want. And with up to a 330-foot range and positionable antennas, you're not going to have to worry about dropouts anymore. That's not a thing. They charge via USB-C even while they're in use, using them as a cinch as they were designed from the start for ease of use, and there's so much more to know about them, so head on over to SaramonicuSA.com. Use that PetaPixel 20 offer code for 20% off all day, every day, and get the high-quality professional sound that you've been searching for. With Saramonic, you will sound remarkable. Next. Another third-party lens maker whose products I have yet to use is Cosina. But maybe that'll change as the company has just announced their new Voigtlander Macro APO Ultron 35mm f2 for Fuji's X mount. Now you see why this interests me, right? Because I'm a Fuji guy. I'm also not scared to use an all-manual lens. Again, thanks to focus peaking, getting sharp focus is not an issue. And as this lens has metal contacts, it can also communicate with the Fuji camera I attach it to, and thus you've got more complete EXIF data. Since Fuji's X mount is APS-C crop, the 35mm f2 effectively becomes a 52.5mm lens in 35mm terms. So basically, it's a fast 52. I'm just going to ignore the 0.5. I'll round down. It's constructed of 9 elements in 6 groups with 3 abnormally dispersed glass. The apochromat design should yield natural color without color bleeding, in addition to suppressing axial chromatic aberration and chromatic aberration. And the company says that this lens is relatively compact despite its f2 aperture and macro capability. Cosina says that the optical system of this lens is optimized for the image sensors in Fuji's X series cameras and suppresses distortion, dimming, and color cast in the peripheral areas of the image without optical correction from the camera. This lens has Cosina's all-metal helicoid unit, which uses high-quality grease to produce what the company calls appropriate torque. And yes, I'm doing air quotes here. And as a result of using that grease, which is the word as we know, you get what the company says is focusing operation that's smooth yet responsive for fine focus adjustments. Touting grease. That's what things have come to, I tell you. This lens has an aperture ring, which uses a mechanism that's directly connected to the opening and closing of the aperture blades, thus allowing anyone shooting with it to feel that operation directly. It has an aperture range of f2 through f22 with a 10-bladed aperture diaphragm, yielding what the company says is a more circular-shaped bokeh. And thanks to those metal contacts I told you about, this lens communicates EXIF data with the body and works with the camera's in-body image stabilization, also known as IBIS, as well as parallax correction. Cosina promotes this lens as being a macro lens as it has a 1:2 magnification ratio and can focus as close as 6.4 inches from the subject, also known as 16.26 centimeters. Now, if you're going to do that, of course, you're definitely going to want to be on a tripod. That, and it wouldn't at all hurt to be using a 3-way geared head like the one that I have from one of our sponsors, Benro. You're going to be seeing that geared head in a BTS video that Benro is going to be releasing soon that I shot for that Table Pod Flex video that they also had me shoot. Until you use one, especially with a macro like I recently did with Leo's probe lens, you just don't know what you're missing out on. No more needing to screw around with a ball head trying to get things just right and spend a lot of minutes doing so. And yes, I'm on a tangent here, but bear with me. It's got these 3 knobs and you can fine tune where your lens is pointed quickly and precisely. And it is awesome. Everybody should have one. Well, most everyone. Anyhow, the Cosina Voigtlander Macro APO Ultron 35mm f2 will be released sometime in August of 2022 for 93,000 yen, which sounds like a lot. That's roughly $673 US currently. Next. If you're a Nikon user or you're thinking about becoming one, now might be the time to make the switch, as the company has confirmed that this August of 2022, they're going to be raising prices, much as we saw elsewhere in the world this past April. And while the price increases are generally not huge, they could really add up if you're saving your beans and making the jump over to mirrorless Z. The Nikkor Z2828 SE and the DX 16-50 35-63 VR go up in price the least at $10. The 50-18S and the 50-250 45-63 VR go up by $30. The DX 18-140 35-63 VR and their upcoming MC CF660G CF Express card rise by $40. Both the 14-30 f4S and 105mm f2.8 VRS go up by $50, and the 14-24 28S, the 24-70 28S, and the 70-200 28S each go up by $100. Ouch. Hey, if you're buying those last 3 lenses, also known as the photographer's trinity, you'll soon be paying an additional $300. And that is real money right there. So if you're thinking about making the switch or you're buying any of those lenses, now might be the time. Nikon says that these price increases are due to, quote, severe disruption in global supply chains, end quote, and will go into effect on August 1st of 2022. And since you listen to this show and you're an informed consumer as a result, and you know of this increase, you can actually do something about it. Imagine all those people who don't listen to the show or read photography blogs, etc. They've saved up some money to get some swanky new Nikon gear, and they don't buy until August 1st or later. They're spending more money, and that is no fun. Now, our friends at Nikon Rumors got their hands on a note from Nikon, which reads, quote, following a period of severe disruption in global supply chains, we have experienced continued cost increases to component parts and logistics charges. Whilst we have explored all options to absorb these costs to maintain production on these lines moving forward, we are regrettably having to increase prices, end quote. So my advice would be that if you're interested in any of those lenses, especially the fancier ones, put some serious thought into whether or not you need and want them, and get them before August 1st if you do. Otherwise, you're going to be paying more. But only do so if you know that you really need a particular lens. Don't order one just to save $100. Spending thousands to save $100 is not a good idea after all. A lot of people actually do that though. So make sure you really, really need a particular lens. Do your research and think about it hard. That all said, I don't think this is going to be the only price hike that we're going to see the way the global economy seems to be headed. Come to think of it, that might be a good reason right there to hold off rather than buy. But only you know what the best decision is for you. Next. Meike is on a roll, I tell you. This time with her new 10mm f2 APS-C manual focus only prime lens for Sony E, Fuji X, thank you very much, Nikon Z, Canon RF, and Micro Four Thirds. This new lens has 15 elements in 12 groups, including 2 spherical elements and an aperture range of f2 through f22, and a minimum focusing distance of about 11.8 inches, also known as 0.3 meters. On APS-C crop bodies, this 10mm lens is essentially a 15mm in 35mm full frame terms, with the exception of Canon RF crop bodies, where it's 16mm because of their 1.6 times crop, not 1.5 times. And on Micro Four Thirds, it's 20mm thanks to that 2 times crop factor. This lens has a 107 degree field of view, a horizontal and vertical field of view of 96 degrees and 72 degrees respectively, or respectfully if you say it incorrectly, which you shouldn't. And with Micro Four Thirds, it's 78 and 63. It has a weight of 1.21 pounds, also known as 550 grams. The front filter size is 77 millimeters, and both focusing and aperture control are manual. And if all that sounds great to you, you can get one of these lenses in any of those mounts right now for $449 US. Meike, I tell you, and that's Meike. That's how you pronounce it, Meike. It seems like every other week or so, they're releasing a new lens. I don't know how good they are because I've yet to shoot with one, but hopefully they're pretty solid performers. I've only ever had their vertical grips before, and those have never failed me, so who knows? But optics is a whole other ballgame, of course. Just saying. Next. Now, last episode was assignment number 52, and our assignment sponsored by our good friends at Fujifilm, and that was Share Your Shimmer. And my favorite, tagged with my Fujifilm legacy so I could find them, was from Instagram user Naveed.abz. Naveed went sunset whale watching near Boston recently and came away with some beautiful images of those majestic creatures having what looks to be a great time amid the shimmery Atlantic Ocean. They're beautiful and they make you wish you were there too. So you should check those out. Now for our next assignment, number 53, and again, you can pop around, do them in order, redo them, whatever feels good. Just have fun. Anyhow, number 53 is share your roll. So anything round, a roll of film, actual rolls, etc. Just have fun with it and make sure to use hashtag #MyFujifilmLegacy so we can find them. And again, thanks to Fujifilm for sponsoring our photo assignments and for sharing out their favorites. Now, before we go, consider treating yourself while helping to support this show by using those mostly 20% off promo codes at lensshark.com/deals. And I'd like to thank you all for listening to episode 370 of the PetaPixel Photography Podcast. Don't forget to check us out at petapixel.com/podcast for the show notes and to see what else we have for you. If you head on over there, you can leave us a voicemail question that we can answer here on the show. Or if you don't feel comfortable leaving a voicemail, feel free to email me at lensshark@gmail.com. And if you'd like to connect with me personally, and I hope you do, hit me up on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook, where I'm LensShark. That's LENSSHARK. Don't forget the 2 S's in the middle there. I'm not Len Shark. I'm not responsible for what that guy says. All right, with that, I'll see you all in episode 371. Well, it's f8 and 2/50 of a second outside. It's time to shoot.
Please subscribe to the PetaPixel Photography Podcast. My daddy is the host.